From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefanía Bravo, and this is From the South. A day ahead of the midterm elections in the United States, President Donald Trump has been campaigning across the country. On Sunday evening, he was in Georgia, where the Democrat Stacey Abrams is hoping to become the first black woman governor in the history of the United States. Trump called Abrams one of the most extreme far-left politicians in the country, and once again, he warned that his government will not let the migrant caravan crossing Mexico enter the U.S.
How about that caravan? Do you want to let that caravan just pour in? I don't think so. In the meantime, you saw, last week I called up the United States military. We're not playing games, folks. There's no game. Because you look at what's marching up, that's an invasion. That's an invasion.
But despite the negative messages about the migrant caravan from the U.S. administration, many people believe they should be welcomed. That's the case of residents in the small Texas border town of San Elizario. People believe the members of the migrant caravan making its way toward the U.S. are hardworking people. Many of the inhabitants also have a migrant background, and they want new migrants to have the chance they had when they arrived in the country.
It's not an issue for me for any kind of immigrant coming in because they're humans, we're human too. We were born and we were taught how to treat them with respect.
The trial of Mexican drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman has begun in New York. He's allegedly the head of Mexico's Sinaloa drug cartel and is charged with 17 counts of murder, drug trafficking, and money laundering. El Chapo is responsible for smuggling almost 200 tons of cocaine into the United States. Security has been tightened to prevent him from escaping, something he managed to do before. So the police will close the Brooklyn Bridge to the public when he's en route to the hearings. This trial is expected to last more than 4 months. The U.S. government has given partial exemptions to 8 countries that buy oil from Iran to give them time to adjust. But it says the sanctions will begin to reduce Iranian oil exports to zero.
We have decided to issue temporary allotments to a handful of countries, responsive both to the specific circumstances and to ensure a well-supplied oil market. The U.S. will be granting these exemptions to China, India, Italy, Greece, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Turkey.
However, in his TV address, President Rouhani said Iran would overcome these sanctions.
This fact is that the Islamic Republic of Iran today can sell its oil, and God willing, it will sell it. Even if they did not make these 8 countries exceptions, we would sell our oil again. I have not seen any administration in the White House as racist as the one in this period. So when a group is racist and does not care about international laws, then you cannot expect more from them. This is the current situation that we are seeing.
And meanwhile, the Central American migrant caravan continues its march to the north. At least 2,500 migrants from the first caravan have already arrived in Mexico State. They are being housed at a sports stadium. Others decided to gather in Puebla to rest and wait for more migrants to arrive. They planned to set off early this Monday from Mexico City, 100 kilometers away.
Well, I'm a bit exhausted because of the cold and because we have not eaten. Everything else is going well, thank God. I'm having health, I just have not eaten. What I want to do? Well, help my parents, get them out, give them everything I can.
But hundreds of other migrants are still struggling to reach Mexico City. A few of them have hopped on. They say this will help them reach their destination much faster. They hope to join the others by Monday evening. Members of the second migrant caravan have to walk almost 100 kilometers every day, something that is only possible due to the help and solidarity of the people from southern Mexico.
Honduran migrants are not only heading north on foot, some are also on their way in vehicles thanks to the solidarity of Mexican drivers.
Please everyone, calm down. We all are going to get in, but please let's do it in order.
The high temperature of this region, as well as the length of the journey, is affecting children in particular.
Cover children's heads, and please give them water so they don't dehydrate.
Eladio is using his van to carry women and children from Pijijapan to the village of Arriaga. It is a 98-kilometer road which would be near impossible to walk on foot.
We have to show solidarity with our Salvadoran and Honduran brothers and sisters. It is how we should help protect life.
Migrants have been receiving people's help in every step of their journey north.
We are very grateful because they have helped us a lot with food and transportation. Thanks to God and to them, we are going to fulfill our dream.
The group finally arrived to Arriaga and can now rest. The perseverance of migrants plus Mexican solidarity have made one more stage in this trip possible. But they do not forget their next goal, to reunite with their first caravan in Mexico City.
Our correspondent in Córdoba, Mexico, Eduardo Martinez, tells us more about the route of the first caravan.
We are still in special coverage following the first migrant caravan. Right now we're in Córdoba, in the state of Veracruz, where the majority of the people from this group who left Guatemala on the 19th of October are hitchhiking on the highway to reach Mexico City. They're still over 300 kilometers away from their next destination, but the migrants say they're still strong and determined to keep going.
We thank Eduardo Martinez for that report. And now let's take a look at how the migrant caravans are moving. There are currently 4 caravans. The first caravan in red came from Honduras and has more than 4,000 people. The second and third caravans in yellow and green came from Honduras and El Salvador and together have 4,000 people. The fourth caravan in orange also came from El Salvador with more than 1,000 people. They have all now reached Mexico. Mexican people continue to show their solidarity with the migrants. A couple invited a group of Hondurans sheltering in their town to their wedding. The Mexican bride and her Honduran groom, who is also a Mexican resident, laid on a treat for the migrants who are temporarily sheltering in the church on their journey to the north. Migrants cheered the couple, sharing their big day. According to the tradition, the bride threw her bouquet, which women from the migrant group tried to catch. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Tuesday, Grenadians and Antiguans and Barbudans will vote in a critical referendum to determine whether the Caribbean Court of Justice or the CCJ would be the nation's final court of appeal. At the moment, the London-based Privy Council has been retained as the final court of appeal for most Caribbean Community member states, but not without rancor.
By Wednesday, the 7 CCJ judges may have a lot more work on their hands. If Antigua and Barbuda and Grenada sign on to the CCJ, they join Barbados, Belize, Dominica and Guyana as countries in the CCJ's jurisdiction as final appellate court. For many, having Caribbean judges serving as the ultimate arbiters is the final step toward true independence and full regional integration. Adopting the CCJ would replace the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council based in London, an obscure court which many feel is too far removed from the Caribbean and Caribbean issues and too reminiscent of the colonial past. Switching to the CCJ is also less costly and matters can be heard faster than the Privy Council.
Everything is all set for the court to become as accepted as, for example, the University of the West Indies, or the Caribbean Development Bank, or the Caribbean Examinations Council. All Caribbean institutions run by Caribbean nationals working to promote the ethos and goals of a proud Caribbean people.
But it's that distance, literal and figurative, that keeps many in the Caribbean from adopting the regional appellate court. Many people don't trust Caribbean judges, fearing they can be easily corrupted, despite countless measures to ensure that they aren't. Also, there have been no accusations of corruption in the court's 18-year history.
Already know when I do anything wrong, my mother got to write quite the queen. So let we remain there still, acknowledge of the queen, the previous council, but we are ready for the CCJ yet.
I know of it, I know the CCJ and what it means to us as a people. But if we decide to go off away from the Queen, we have to go off from the Queen and off from Barbudan entirely.
It's been a long road to get here. The first proposal for a Caribbean Court of Appeal was tabled back in 1970. It wasn't until 2001 the first agreement to establish the Caribbean Court was signed by 10 states. 2 more countries signed on a few years later, bringing the number to 12. Since 2005, the CCJ has been housed in this building in Port of Spain. Now, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has made no real steps to implement the CCJ as their final court of appeal. In one debate many years ago, the opposition said that there must be a referendum before that can happen. But there are only 2 countries which absolutely must have a referendum to implement the CCJ. That's Antigua and Barbuda and Grenada. And they are going to the polls very soon. Kijan Haynes, Telesur, Port of Spain.
3 Venezuelan soldiers guarding the border with Colombia have been killed in an attack by paramilitary forces. The defense minister of the National Bolivarian Armed Forces of Venezuela, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, has spoken about the murders. Padrino Lopez condemned this act and warned that Venezuela has no place for paramilitary groups.
Our men were ambushed. These people have murdered 3 members of our Bolivarian National Armed Forces. 3 National Guards. They were killed in Amazonas by a criminal group that is a byproduct of the internal war that exists in Colombia. In Venezuela, there's no room for armed groups that work outside the law, no room for paramilitary groups. We reject the inability of the Colombian state to not control these paramilitary groups, their violence and their drug trafficking.
The Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel has met the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on his visit to Pyongyang. The 2 leaders discussed ways to boost bilateral ties in fields such as the economy, culture, public health, science, and technology. This is the 2nd country on an international tour by Díaz-Canel. He has already visited Russia and will travel on to China, Vietnam, and Laos. Our correspondent in Havana, Cuba, Alien Fernandez, brings us more.
Hola, un gusto saludarte. En efecto, gran repercusión internacional está teniendo.
The visit of Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel to North Korea has had a great international impact. Both nations have a number of ties in regards to cooperation and a shared international agenda. After receiving a big welcome in Pyongyang, Miguel Díaz-Canel will have a meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and other state officials. Díaz-Canel will also participate in an arts festival that will be celebrated in the May Day Stadium. Both leaders have already had dinner together, during which they talked about their willingness to reinforce relationships. With this visit, a clear message is being sent about who Cuba's allies are, despite the attempts by the US to dismantle the Cuban political system.
We thank Alien Fernandez for that report. Peruvian police have used tear gas against activists during an anti-bullfighting protest. Hundreds of animal rights activists gathered in the capital Lima during the country's traditional annual bullfighting fair. The protesters want to push for the outlawing of bullfighting. They argue this practice amounts to legalized torture.
No more killings. That is the only thing we want. Stop the killings. These sort of games should not exist.
Peru is one of the 8 countries which brutally tortures bulls in front of people and which considers it a form of cultural art.
Colombia's Ombudsman Office has denounced the displacement of almost 800 people, including 250 children, in rural areas of the Department of North Santander due to fighting between armed groups. The massive displacement started this Friday from the municipality of Acari as a result of confrontations between the National Liberation Army and the Popular Liberation Army. The United Nations has issued an alert over the risk of new displacements in the same area. El Salvador's government, through a new tourism initiative, is pushing to revitalize the Nahuatl language. It's aimed at ensuring indigenous people have a voice and visibility.
Children sing the national anthem of El Salvador. They belong to this indigenous community in the western part of the country. It's all part of a linguistics project aimed at reviving native languages in the region.
The idea or the aim of this project is to reach a new generation, so even when grandparents have passed away, the seed continues to flourish, and the Nahuatl language and culture lives on.
Another project aims to increase the production and marketing of clay handicraft.
This initiative has been abandoned for so much time now, it's finally been resuscitated. Our ancestors made only the pot and the skillet. Now we are diversifying and making candle holders, flower pots, glasses, everything that can be bought in a shop.
These initiatives are made possible with the financial and technical support of the Agricultural and Livestock Ministry. It's all part of the enterprise competitiveness program called Rural Sunrise.
We are determined to strengthen not only our identity, but our many talents, and at the same time, it creates employment opportunities.
Tourism can also be one of the main drivers of the community's economies. That's why these young guides are teaching visitors about the Nahuatl people culture.
Our ancestors, the Pipiles, performed their rituals right here, according to the stone we have in front of us. It is a stone they used for meditation while facing the waterfall. When they finished, they would go into the water. They would then emerge healed and healthy.
These projects have already had a direct impact on the quality of life of many families. The Rural Sunrise initiative is spread across 12 municipalities. Over 6,000 families are benefiting from these social and environmental projects taking place in 85% of communities.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 78 students have been kidnapped from a secondary school by an armed group in the city of Bamenda in Cameroon. The group also abducted 3 other school staff, including the principal. No group has claimed responsibility for the abduction, but local authorities blame separatist militias who have been demanding the independence of 2 English-speaking regions for years. This is not the first time students have been kidnapped in this area. 5 students abducted in last month are still missing. Rescue services in the south of Spain have picked up several hundred refugees from the Mediterranean Sea. Our correspondent in Andalucía, Sergio Rodrigo, has this report.
More
than 500 people have been rescued by Spanish Maritime Safety and Rescue Society, coming in 100 boats. More than 200 of the migrants have been transferred to the port city of Malaga, as you can see behind me, where the Red Cross has set up an emergency camp to assist these people. Among them was a pregnant woman in urgent need of help who was transferred directly from the boat to a hospital in Almeria. In recent years, the route through the Mediterranean Sea has been one of the most popular routes taken by migrants aiming to reach the European Union. In 2018, more than 45,000 people have tried to reach the continent through this sea route, but unfortunately over 560 people have died on their way, according to the International Organization for Migration. Rescue workers are also operational in the Strait of Gibraltar.
And now let's take a look at what other stories are making headlines around the world.
At least 500 ambulances have blocked roads leading to Paris in protest at reforms that would allow hospitals instead of patients to choose which ambulance operator to use. Small independent services fear they won't be able to compete with larger firms. Up to 2,000 ambulances were expected to join the protest. Paramedics were also set together in front of the Health Ministry. Chinese President Xi Jinping has met with Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev during the first China International Import Expo in Shanghai. The two leaders pledged to deepen ties, especially as the United States imposes stricter sanctions against both countries. They also discussed establishing a cross-border payment system that would allow the use of their own currencies in a bilateral trade.
The engagement level between our countries is unprecedentedly high. In terms of the number of high-level meetings, for instance, you have already held 3 meetings with Vladimir Putin over this year and will meet again at the G20. All this proves that our countries have established ties of strategic partnership and engagement.
Thousands of fish have been found dead in the Euphrates River in Iraq. The region's agriculture chief said the mass death of carp was most likely caused by a bacterial disease that rapidly spread due to overcrowded fish farms. Health officials are still investigating the exact cause but advised people to stop eating fish. Locals have long complained about the mismanagement of river and water resources in the region.
Pro-government forces in Yemen have moved further into the strategic port city of Hodeidah, which is controlled by Houthi rebels. Warplanes from the Saudi-led coalition supported the advance with dozens of airstrikes. UNICEF said the assault on Hodeidah, a crucial port for humanitarian aid, would jeopardize the lives of Yemenis across the country. 14 million Yemenis stand on the brink of famine. The United Nations has called it the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. A woman in Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, has set up a miniature village to keep traditions alive. 80-year-old poet, storyteller, and retired school teacher Hatifari Munongi has used savings from her teaching career to build a repository for indigenous knowledge and the country's rich cultural heritage. Munongi says she wants to give urban children an idea of how African people lived before and now. Today is the last day for official campaigning ahead of the presidential election in Madagascar. People will head to the polls on Wednesday to choose from 36 candidates in the first round of the presidential elections. Although pre-vote polling has been banned since September, analysis shows the most popular among the candidates are 3 former heads of the country. About 9 million people are expected to vote.
I'm happy. I'm going to vote on November 7th. I will cast a blank ballot paper because all the successive presidents have not had any consideration for the poor. They think only of their own interests.
Meanwhile, leading contender Andry Rajoelina has promised to make the fight against corruption his priority if elected president. His opponents have, however, alleged that during his previous stint as president, he turned a blind eye to combat widespread stealing of public resources. The 5th West Africa Security Forum has opened in the Senegalese capital Dakar amid concerns about the state of the regional anti-terrorist force. Less than a quarter of the 400 million euros pledged for the G5 Sahel force has been dispersed so far. The G5 Sahel is a scheme backed by France, formed in 2015 to roll back jihadism and lawlessness in 5 states on the Sahara's southern border.
It belongs to experts, military and diplomats, to let us know what is going wrong. It's the same in CAR and in DRC. The UN is in Congo since 1960. There is a problem.
And finally, the French city of Toulouse has hosted a show in which residents were overshadowed by a parade with big mechanical creatures. As part of a stunt by the French street theater group La Machine, dozens of artists operated a giant spider and a minotaur with 14 meters high each. The creatures are part of the group's Guardian of the Temple show and are based on ancient Roman ruins found nearby. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.